Joined over the phone by Engineer Hassan Shaaban, our economic expert. Engineer Shaaban, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Sir, Cairo is seeking to double the Egyptian exports to the African continent to 10 billion US dollar by the year 2025. How do you see the drive to expand imports to the African continent from your point of view?
Well, we've been trying for a decade to increase our exports to the African countries, and ever since our president was the head of the African Union, actually, Egypt exerted a lot of efforts to open new markets in Africa. And I think we are in the process of increasing our exports using the new highways that we are constructing right now, mainly the Alexandria Cape Town highway. This will actually help in increasing the exports to the countries that will actually, be crossed by this highway. There is a lot of goods in Egypt, or a lot of products in Egypt, that we could export to the African countries, mainly the countries that do not have shores, actually, the closed countries, like Chad and Niger and Dahomey. All of these countries do not have shores on the Mediterranean, nor the Atlantic Ocean, or the Red Sea. And Egypt could be a logistic country for these countries. We could export a lot of these goods from our ports on the Red Sea to the heart of Africa. There is a little problem in these countries. They do not have cooling systems, and they canned food. I mean, the conservatives, they canned food. The Egyptian industry in this particular field is very successful, and we could actually have a good market share of the canned food in these countries. Also, a lot of the African countries are witnessing a boom in infrastructure, and our construction material like cement, ceramics, steel, reinforcement bars, and so forth are required in these countries, and we could be very competitive if we use the distance, the element of distance to our benefit, because we will use onshore transportation, highways, and so forth. So Egypt have a very good chance in doing business with Africa in the coming years, actually.
Indeed. Engineer Shaaban, which Egyptian exports are most attractive to the African markets?
Well, construction material, actually, and as I said, canned food is two items that Egypt could be very superior in these two items. Cement is a product that is required in Africa. I think these two elements are the two major fields that we could be very successful in.
Indeed. Sir, how would you describe here the role of the private sector in this regard?
Well, I think private sector is a main player in this particular field, because a lot of the Egyptian companies that I'm referring to belong to the private sector. So I think we could be very successful. Let me put it this way. Also, there is a very important item that we could be very successful in, which is exporting of salt. A lot of these countries lack salt, actually, and Egypt is a major, country that produces salt. and we used to export salt to these countries through the port of Mombasa in Kenya. So I think if we keep on, working on this, fertilizers also are very important field. But I think nowadays we are exporting fertilizers to countries in Europe. But I think if we increase our market share, international market share of fertilizer, urea and so forth, especially we have the raw material to produce the fertilizers, because we are a gas producing country, and we could actually be very successful in exporting fertilizers to Europe, to Africa.
Indeed. Here, sir, what advantages do free trade agreements give to the Egyptian exports in Africa?
Well, it's the location. Egypt enjoys a very special location, of course. On the Mediterranean, Alexandria and Port Said and Damietta could be ports for African countries that do not have shores on the Mediterranean, as well as the ports on the Red Sea. We could, our ports on the Red Sea, like Qusair or Safaga, or Ras Banas even, could work as ports for the closed countries in Africa. We need, to consider a major project similar to the Alexandria Cape Town, is the Safaga or Ras Banas highway all the way to Dakar, across the continent, from east to west, not from north to south. So this will create a lot of markets for us.
Yes, indeed. Sir, why is the volume of trade between Egypt and Africa small still compared to the opportunities available on the continent?
Come back with this again, please.
Yes. Why still is the volume of trade between Egypt and Africa small compared to the opportunities available in the African continent?
Well, of course, the cooperation between African countries and Egypt, a lot of African countries produce raw materials that could be utilized in Egyptian industry, or even the private sector could actually mobilize to the African countries where raw materials is produced, like copper and so forth. And we can, just establish our industries in these countries, and it will be an Egyptian industry in the heart of Africa, instead of producing getting the raw material to Egypt and then manufacturing a product and export it back to Africa. We might as well relocate our industry in the heart of Africa. Still, it will carry the Egyptian flag on top of it.
Indeed. Engineer Hassan Shaaban, our economic expert, very much delighted to be joined by you in our program today. It was a pleasure, sir. And our dear viewers, the Irrigation Ministry asserted the keenness to indicate the inclusion of priorities and challenges of Africa in all international initiatives. This came during the virtual participation in the meeting of Leaders Committee of the WCC, which is held to agree on the plan of the WCC and determine the role of the leaders in raising